I'm excited to share with you today my fermented corn salsa recipe with Mexican spices. This recipe can be made spicy or non-spicy, plus it works with both fresh and frozen corn, so you can enjoy it any time of the year. Be sure to stay to the end of the video where I'm going to show you my fermentation-packed burrito that includes this delicious corn salsa. The measurements for the following ingredients are found in the written recipe. I'll place a link in the description. If using fresh ears, slice the kernels off the cob. And if using frozen, there's no need to defrost beforehand. You can thaw first if you wish, but it's not required. Add to a large mixing bowl. The next ingredient is diced onion. You can use any color onion, but I think red is best. Next, add to the bowl diced tomatoes. Then add the pepper. You know how much heat you like, so add as much or as little hot pepper as you wish. You can dice it or slice it, remove or keep the seeds, it's up to you. For those of you like me that can't take the heat, you can use bell pepper as a substitute, as I'm doing here. Next, add 2 large cloves of diced garlic. Squeeze 2 wedges of fresh lime juice over everything. Now we'll add the secret ingredient to the mix, Mexican seasoning. If it's labeled taco seasoning, that also works perfectly. Trust me, this is so good, so don't skip it since it's the essential seasoning of this recipe. With your first batch, start with the amount that's called for in the written recipe because I think it's the perfect balance. But with any future batches you make, feel free to experiment by dialing the seasoning up or down to your taste preference. This next ingredient is optional, cilantro. People either love it or they hate it. I'm a cilantro lover, so I'm going to add it in. But if you don't like it, simply leave it out. Not a problem. Mix everything together. Now let's prepare the brine. Add the salt to the water and mix thoroughly. Set it aside, we'll use it in a moment. Let's now prepare the jar it's going to be packed into by washing it in hot soapy water. No need to sterilize, hot soapy water is sufficient. Do the same for the fermenting weight. We're now ready to load the jar. I like to use a wide mouth canning funnel to load the jar because it helps prevent spills. Once the jar seems pretty full, I'm going to use this little tart tamper to press the mixture down. Now I'm going to pour in the rest of the ingredients from the bowl. The jar should once again be pretty full. Press the contents down once more. This is a good fill level. Add the glass fermenting weight. This will keep the contents safely submerged beneath the brine, which is important. And if you don't have a glass fermenting weight yet, try one of the DIY fermentation weight suggestions I give in this video. Pour the brine over everything in the jar, including the fermentation weight. Pour until the weight is covered like this. Add a loose lid and place it on the plate to catch any possible brine overflow. Then leave it on the counter at room temperature for 48 hours. Yes, that's right, it will be ready for eating in only 2 days. This is a short-term fermentation rather than a long-term fermentation. A short-term fermentation is ready in a matter of days, in contrast to a long fermentation that isn't ready for many weeks or months. And its storage life in the fridge is also shorter. For example, a short-term fermentation will last about 1 to 2 weeks in the fridge, in contrast to a long fermentation that can last for many months or even years. Why? In short, it has to do with the natural sugars present in the food, as well as some other factors. I explain further in this video right here. I'll place a link in the description so you can watch that video next if you want to learn more. Taste test the salsa at 48 hours. You can leave it for an extra day if you want more of that fermentation tang or sourness, but I really don't recommend longer than 3 days because it can over-ferment. Over-ferment does not mean spoil. It means that the beneficial bacteria that are responsible for the fermentation to take place are feeding on those natural sugars in the food at such an exponential rate that they're excreting high amounts of lactic acid. Lactic acid is a good thing and is one of the components that makes for a safe fermentation, but too much of it can make the final product too sour for pleasurable eating. That's what over-fermentation is, and why I recommend only 48 to 72 hours max for this salsa's fermentation period. Here's the salsa at 48 hours. I'm going to first remove the lid and give it a smell. It should have a light, soury sweet smell mixed with the scent of Mexican seasoning. If it has a foul or repulsive odor, that means something went wrong and don't eat it. But if it smells soury sweet with that hint of seasoning, you're good to go and ready to eat. Remove the fermenting weight and feel free to give it a taste test. Yummy! I cannot wait to dive in. For storage, place a tight lid on the jar and transfer it to the refrigerator. It will last for 7 to 14 days rather than months because, again, this is a short-term fermentation. Hopefully, though, you and your family will enjoy this corn salsa so much that it won't have a chance to hang around any longer. Of course, you can eat the salsa the classic way with some chips, garnish the salsa with a splash more seasoning if you wish, or not. Either way is yummy yum good. Now I'm going to make my fermentation burrito. First, I'm going to add some rice. You can add any color of rice. This happens to be a black rice, also known as forbidden rice. It's very high in the antioxidant anthocyanin, which is what gives it its dark blackish purple color. Next, I'm adding some chicken, but you can add any type of meat you wish, and if you're vegan, instead add extra veggies, rice, and beans. A little lettuce. These are fermented black beans. I have a video on how to make them if you're interested. Maybe you've noticed here, I'm using a slotted spoon to strain out the brine so the burrito doesn't get mushy. Next up are these divine fermented onions. Onions are a must to ferment if you haven't done that yet. Out of this world good. You can find the link for the recipe in the description. Corn salsa is last but not least. Again, I'm using a slotted spoon to strain the brine. And by the way, don't toss the brine. It's full of probiotics and other nutrients, so add it over salads or into sauces and dressings. And yes, you can even drink it. Roll this baby up. Voila, a scrumptious burrito packed with fermentation goodness and nutrition. Remember to check out my video on what makes a short-term fermentation versus a long-term. That's right here. And here are the recipe videos for those fermented onions and beans. And I share with you all my favorite fermenting gear on my website. I've had fun fermenting with you today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.